Hollywood sells us perfect bodies, perfect love stories, perfect endings. But behind the posters and red carpets are 10 queer stars carrying a virus the world once called a death sentence. From Rock Hudson to Jonathan Van Ness, they were shamed, erased, or turned into headlines. Yet somehow they kept creating, loving, and showing up. Tonight, we're telling the stories they were never allowed to tell out loud. 1. Rock Hudson, the day the perfect man got sick. For decades, Rock Hudson was America's straight dream. 6'5", jaw of granite, the man who kissed Elizabeth Taylor and Doris Day on screen like it was the most natural thing in the world. Posters of him were taped above girls' beds while the boys tried to copy his swagger. And the whole time, Hollywood knew he was gay. Rock's life was a deal with the devil, fame in exchange for silence, a studio-arranged marriage, carefully staged dates with women, secret boyfriends hidden in guest houses, and at private pool parties where the cameras never came. He built a career on playing the man every woman wanted, while being told the man he actually wanted could never exist in public. Then came HIV. He got the diagnosis in 1984, at the height of the panic, when the tabloids called it the gay plague. Imagine that, the most famous straight man in America learning he has the virus everyone blamed on gay men. He still had to act, still had to kiss Linda Evans on Dynasty, terrified he might hurt her, terrified anyone might guess why he was suddenly so thin. When he finally appeared on TV, frail and unrecognizable, the world gasped. The press begged for details about his mysterious illness, until his team admitted it. Rock Hudson had AIDS. Overnight, the perfect fantasy became a human being with a virus. Some fans felt betrayed. Others felt compassion for the first time. Did he owe the world the truth earlier? Or was a gay man in the 1950s, 80s simply trying to survive the only way Hollywood allowed? Either way, his death cracked the closet door. If he could get AIDS, anyone could. His best friend Elizabeth Taylor took that pain and turned it into activism, raising millions for research. Rock didn't live to see a world where HIV is treatable and queer actors can be out. But every time a gay man walks into a clinic without shame, some part of that courage started with the day the perfect man stood in front of the world and looked sick. Tell me in the comments, do you see Rock Hudson as a hero, a victim of his time, or both? 2. Liberace, the man who sparkled while he lied. Liberace didn't just play the piano. He performed excess. Capes lined with fur, chandeliers on stage, rings on every finger, glitter everywhere. He was camp before straight America even had a word for it. Housewives adored him. Churches booked him. And queer men looked at the TV and thought, "Oh, we see you." But if anyone said it out loud, he sued. Liberace spent his entire career threatening journalists and ex-lovers for calling him what he was, a gay man. When his much younger boyfriend Scott Thorson sued him for palimony, Liberace stood in court and swore under oath he was not homosexual and had never had sex with a man. Imagine the level of fear and self-hatred it takes to erase your own love life before a judge just to protect your brand. Behind the rhinestones was a man trapped. Trapped by fame, trapped by religion, trapped by a time that said, "We'll cheer for your flamboyance as long as we can pretend it isn't queer." When he got sick, he hid that too. He died in 1987, his doctor trying to list heart failure instead of AIDS. The coroner had to step in and tell the truth. So, what do we do with Liberace now? On one hand, he embodied the worst closet survival tactics, suing people for telling the truth, denying his own community, staying silent while others with AIDS were demonized. On the other hand, Could he have survived as an out gay man in the 1950s-70s and still become the highest paid entertainer in the world? Would anyone have let him even start? His story forces us into a messy conversation. Is visibility always the right choice, even if it means losing everything? Can we blame a gay man for playing by cruel rules he didn't create? Liberace never got to say, "I'm gay, I have AIDS, and I'm still me." Maybe that's why his story still stings. It's a reminder of what happens when the world loves your talent but hates your truth. Drop a comment. Is Liberace a cautionary tale, a tragic product of his era, or both at once? 3. Anthony Perkins, the horror villain who feared real-life headlines more. Most people know Anthony Perkins as Norman Bates from Psycho, the shy motel owner with a secret so dark it made cinema history. But behind that performance was a man living a different kind of double life. Anthony was a beautiful, sensitive bi man in an industry that demanded clear labels, leading man or pervert. He had relationships with men like Tab Hunter and Rudolf Nureyev, then married Barry Berenson and had children. To the public, he was the intense, slightly odd actor. To close friends, he was a queer man constantly negotiating what he was allowed to show. Then, in the late 80s, he caught something more terrifying than any Hitchcock script, HIV. And the way he found out wasn't a quiet talk in a doctor's office. A tabloid got hold of his results first. The National Enquirer outed his diagnosis to the world before his own doctor could. That's how little dignity people with AIDS were given. Your blood could become a headline. He didn't go on TV and cry. He didn't do interviews. He chose silence, not because he was ashamed of being queer, but because he wanted to protect his sons from a world that equated their father with contagion and sin. In his final written statement, he said he had learned more about love and kindness from the community of people with AIDS than from Hollywood. That's a brutal indictment from a man who'd seen both sides up close. Was he right to stay quiet? Some activists argue that if big names like Perkins had spoken earlier, the stigma might have broken sooner. Others say expecting a dying man to educate the world is just another form of cruelty. He was already carrying the weight of a homophobic industry and a deadly virus. Did he also have to carry our expectations of heroism? Anthony Perkins died in 1992, but his legacy is bigger than one creepy character. He embodies a generation of queer artists who were punished twice, once for who they loved and again for the virus they carried. What do you think? If Anthony Perkins lived in today's Hollywood, would he be celebrated as a queer icon? Or would the industry still try to hide him behind the shower curtain? Let me know in the comments. 4. Robert Reed, America's perfect dad, dying of a secret. On TV, Robert Reed was the safest man in America. Mike Brady from the Brady Bunch didn't drink, didn't swear, always had the right answer and a clean shirt. For millions of kids, he was the dad they wished they had. What they didn't know is that the man playing him was suffocating. Reed was a classically trained Shakespeare actor. He wanted Chekhov, Ibsen, difficult men with complicated hearts. Instead, he got plots about misbehaving puppies and mixed-up lunches. He fought with producers over scripts because deep down he knew, I am capable of so much more than this. Now add one more secret on top of that artistic frustration. He was a gay man playing the ultimate straight family fantasy in an era when coming out meant career suicide. On set, the kids adored him, but he kept his distance. He'd show up, do the scenes, retreat. Not because he didn't love them, but because he knew the truth. If the tabloids ever caught a whiff of his real life, his relationships, the bars he snuck into, the fear, their show would be collateral damage. So he insulated them. He built a wall around his heart in the name of protection. Then HIV came, quietly, privately. He never addressed it publicly. When he died, the official cause was cancer, with a note on the death certificate, HIV positive. That tiny line exploded across the media. The man who embodied traditional family values was suddenly being dissected as a closeted gay man with AIDS. Some viewers felt lied to. Others, especially queer fans, saw something else. Proof that even the ideal American father didn't fit the rules he was forced to sell. Here's the gut punch. The kids from the show later said they would have loved him just the same if they'd known. He never trusted the world enough to find out. So what do you think? Did Robert Reed have a responsibility to come out and speak about HIV? Or did he already give more than enough by just surviving in that role? Tell me in the comments, and if stories like this hit you in the gut, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. 5. Dack Rambo, the soap heartthrob who refused to die quietly. If you watched Dallas or Another World, you know that face. Dack Rambo had the kind of beauty that made soap cameras fall in love. Sharp cheekbones, slow smile, a certain cowboy softness that made housewives swoon at lunchtime. He played rugged woman-chasing men. Off-screen, his reality was much more complicated. Rambo was bisexual. In the 70s and 80s, that wasn't a vibe, it was a liability. Rumors about his private life swirled constantly. Roles disappeared suddenly. Storylines were cut short. He kept his head down, dated women publicly, tried to control the narrative while the studio system quietly decided he was too risky. Then he tested positive for HIV. For most actors of his generation, that was the end of the story. Retreat, hide, waste. Away in silence. But Dack did something almost no one else did at the time. He went on national television and told the truth. He came out as HIV positive and admitted he was bisexual on Entertainment Tonight in the early 90s, at the height of the panic. The cost was brutal. Work offers dried up almost completely. Friends pulled away. He became, in industry terms, uninsurable. Yet in the middle of that loss, Rambo said something that still echoes. "The truth has set me free, and I feel better now than I ever have." Instead of clinging to whatever was left of his career, he spent his remaining years traveling, speaking, educating people about safe sex and stigma. The man who once played scripted drama became a whistleblower against Hollywood itself, calling out how producers quietly erased actors they suspected were gay or sick. Was that courage, or a man with nothing left to lose? Would you have done the same? Go public and sacrifice your livelihood just so some kid out there doesn't feel alone? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories about stars who chose truth over survival, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. 6. Michael Jeter. The tiny man who proved HIV wasn't the end. Michael Jeter was never a leading man. He was the wiry guy with the kind eyes, the death row inmate stroking a mouse in the Green Mile, the goofy, elastic-limbed Mr. Noodle on Sesame Street making toddlers laugh. He looked fragile, almost breakable, and yet, inside, he was made of steel. Jeter was openly gay in an industry that liked its queer men either closeted or invisible. Then, in the mid-90s, he got another label, HIV positive. He could have pulled the classic Hollywood move, vanish, pretend it was exhaustion, let the tabloids write their own version. Instead, he went on Entertainment Tonight and said it himself. No spin, no apology, just a small man in a big chair saying, "Yes, I have HIV. No, it doesn't mean my life is over." Here's the part that still hits hard. After that, he kept working. A lot. While many producers quietly blacklisted actors with HIV, others looked at Jeter and saw something else. pure talent. He ran across fields in Jurassic Park 3rd. He acted opposite Kevin Costner in Open Range. He kept doing Sesame Street for millions of kids whose parents might have freaked out if they'd heard the 3 letters HIV, and yet they never saw a sick man. They saw joy. Michael didn't live forever. He died in 2003 from a seizure, not from AIDS. That detail matters. It proves what so many activists had been screaming. With treatment, HIV is not a guaranteed death sentence. He didn't lose a battle. He lived a full, messy, beautiful life with a virus that once wiped out an entire generation of artists. So ask yourself, would Hollywood have let him do all that if he'd been a 6'2" straight leading man talking loudly about his status? Or did he slip through the cracks because he was just a character actor, just weird enough to be overlooked, and just brave enough to use that invisibility as armor? Tell me what you think in the comments. Was Michael Jeter a quiet revolutionary? And if these stories are opening your eyes or breaking your heart a little, make sure you subscribe. There are more names they tried to erase, and we're bringing them back one by one. 7. Alexis Arquette, the trans pioneer Hollywood didn't know what to do with. If you grew up on 90s movies, you've seen Alexis Arquette, even if you didn't know her name. The wild friend in The Wedding Singer, the punk, the weirdo, the one who stole scenes in 2 lines and a side-eye. While the rest of Hollywood clung to gender boxes, Alexis smashed them in platform boots. Born into the famous Arquette family, she could have played it safe. Stayed a quirky, androgynous actor. Cashed the checks. But Alexis decided to live out loud. She talked about being trans when the word transgender still made talk show hosts squirm. She did drag, she did indies, she did whatever the hell felt true. And then there was HIV. She'd been living with the virus since the late 80s, almost her entire adult life. Think about that. Auditions, hormones, surgeries, tabloids, and in the background, pills, labs, doctors, side effects. Transition is hard enough. Transition and HIV in a transphobic, HIV-phobic industry? That's a war most people wouldn't survive. But Alexis didn't hide. She didn't pretend to be clean or safe for public comfort. She showed up thin, tired, sometimes visibly unwell, and still refused to erase herself. That's its own kind of bravery, not the glossy Netflix kind. The messy, I'm still here whether you like it or not kind. When she died in 2016 from AIDS-related complications, her family spoke about how fiercely she lived, how she insisted people see her as she was. No apologies, no neat Hollywood ending, just a trans HIV-positive artist who refused to disappear. And here's where you come in. The reason Alexis still matters is because people like you are willing to watch, listen, and say her name. You're the generation that can look at someone like her and say, she was complicated, chaotic, but she was ours. Tell me in the comments, do you think Hollywood would treat Alexis differently if she were starting out today? And if you're tired of our queer legends being edited out of history, hit subscribe. On this channel, they stay. 8. Pedro Zamora, the boy who turned AIDS into a love story on MTV. Before influencers, there was the real world, San Francisco, and in that house was Pedro Zamora, a 22-year-old gay Cuban-American who walked onto MTV with AIDS and no script. He didn't join the show to chase clout. He joined as an educator with a ticking clock. From day one, he told his roommates calmly, I'm HIV positive. No sad music, no pity angle, just a young man explaining meds, risks, and boundaries. Millions of teens saw, maybe for the first time, that AIDS didn't look like a horror headline. It looked like a funny, kind, stubborn roommate who hated dirty dishes. Then Sean Sasser arrived. Their relationship and their commitment ceremony played out on MTV in front of a generation taught that two men in love was something shameful. Suddenly, AIDS wasn't just hospitals and funerals. It was two young guys promising to love each other while they still had time. Here's the part nobody forgets. Pedro died hours after the season finale aired. Viewers watched his story wrap up while, in real life, his body was failing. Even the president later thanked him for humanizing AIDS more than any government campaign ever had. Pedro didn't live long enough to see pre-pay or TikTok activism, but you're proof his work wasn't wasted. You're here in 2025 choosing to watch a video about an HIV-positive reality star from 1994. That curiosity is how stigma dies. So tell me in the comments, if Pedro were alive today, would he be on YouTube, TikTok, or still shaking up reality TV? And if you believe ordinary queer lives can change the world, subscribe. This channel is where we remember them and where we keep what they started going. 9. Billy Porter, the man who refused to be a tragedy. Billy Porter should have been a star in the 90s. The talent was there. The voice? Ridiculous. But Hollywood only saw one thing: a black queer man who was too much, too femme, too loud, too honest. So they boxed him into chorus lines and side roles while straighter, safer men got the lead. Then, in 2007, life hit harder. He tested positive for HIV. Imagine that. After years of being told he was too gay to succeed, he now carried the virus the world still whispered about like a curse. He kept it secret for 14 years, not because he was ashamed of who he was, but because he knew exactly how cruel this industry could be. Gay and black was already 2 strikes. HIV felt like the 3rd. So he did the unthinkable. He outlived their expectations. He took roles no one else wanted, stayed in the game, and waited. Then came Kinky Boots. Then Pose. Then an Emmy. Suddenly, the man they once ignored was on every red carpet, in gowns and capes, and glittered suits saying, "I am the image of a black queer man living with HIV, and I am not broken." When he finally told the world his diagnosis, he didn't do it for sympathy. He did it for people like you, the ones who've been told, "You're too much, you're damaged, you're over because of who you are or what's in your medical file." If Billy can go from unemployable to history-making while living with HIV, what story have you been told about yourself that maybe isn't true? Drop a comment if his journey hits home. And if you're rooting for every queer kid who's ever been counted out, hit subscribe. This community is yours. 10. Jonathan Van Ness, turning HIV into a sparkle weapon. Jonathan Van Ness walks into a room and the energy shifts. Hair flowing, nails painted, voice bright. People assume the story ends there. Funny, flamboyant, gay. They don't see the rehab stays, the assaults, the eating disorders, the HIV diagnosis at 25. When JVN found out they were HIV positive, they did what so many of us do first: blame themselves, spiral, disappear. In a world that still calls people unclean, those 3 letters can feel like a life sentence. But here's the twist. Jonathan didn't stay in that dark place. They got on treatment, got healthy, and then did something quietly radical. They walked onto Queer Eye and refused to play the sad sick stereotype. Instead, they showed the world what an HIV-positive, non-binary person can look like when they are living. Flipping on a gymnastics mat, laughing too loud, crying with strangers in small towns, preaching you to millions without turning it into a lecture. That's why some people can't stand them, and why so many of you love them. They are a walking argument that you don't have to earn your right to joy, not as a queer person, not as someone with HIV, not as someone who survived things you don't talk about at family dinners. If you're living with HIV or just with shame you never asked for, Jonathan's story is a reminder your life is not over. You are not a warning sign. You can be a lighthouse. Tell me in the comments, does JVN's loud joy inspire you, annoy you, or a little bit of both? And if you're here for queer stories that don't end in tragedy, hit subscribe. You're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is made for. If you're living with HIV or just with a secret you think makes you unlovable, let these 10 remind you, you are not a mistake, and your story isn't over. Medicine changed, but so did we. We learned to listen, to fight, to love louder. Tell me in the comments whose journey hit you hardest, and if you want more queer history no one taught you in school, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us.